music from Austin.
Yeah, I hear there's some good independent musical artists out there.
Can you give me just like, before we really go like fully on the air?
Yes.
How much Power Rangers have you watched in the past 4 days?
4 days?
Yeah.
A lot. An enormous amount.
Like in hours.
I don't even want to say. I don't know.
Amazing.
All I have to say is Power Rangers Super Mega Force is so sick.
So are you going to get in line to go see the movie?
The movie looks like trash, honestly. Looks like trash. What? Yeah, come on. You seen the previews? Looks like some Transformers
you going to Power Rangers?
bootleg, you know? Like,
Listen, I know it's a guilty pleasure a lot like the Ninja Turtles were for me, but Ninja Turtles are way up there for me, and Power Rangers I loved. I don't care that much.
See,
I feel you.
That was like grade 1 or 2 for me, and I don't even have the nostalgia for Power Rangers anymore.
All right, enough Power Ranger talk. Colin, can you do your intro thing?
All right, man. It's morphin' time for the theScore Esports podcast. What is up? And welcome everybody to the show. This is, as I say, theScore Esports podcast. It is the weekly show where we leave some of the plays of the game, the pentakills, the headshots behind, and we talk about the bigger narratives in esports this week. I am Colin McNeil. In the studio with me, of course, as always, is Kyle Chatterson.
What's up?
And Ryan Stratton.
Oh, hey.
Okay, today on the show, guys, we have none other than Weldon Green. He is currently part of G2's League of Legends coaching staff. You can't hear us too well?
As soon as you started broadcasting, it just cut out.
Oh, okay.
1 second, then we'll try to get this fixed up.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
You can't hear me too well, Weldon?
Who's talking now, Colin?
This would be Colin, yeah.
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Oh, okay. All right, well,
Scary stuff.
let's just pretend that never happened and redo the whole thing.
All right, Colin.
So like I was saying, Weldon Green, part of G2's League of Legends coaching staff at the moment. He has worked with TSM, CLG, and other LCS teams in the past. Welcome to the show, Weldon.
Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure to have you here. Before we get into all of the tons of questions we have for you, I just want to clarify a little bit your role with G2. So you work with them in a coaching capacity in regards to mentality and team building and communication. Is that correct?
Yeah, you nailed it more than almost anybody else I hear describe it. Basically,
Right on.
I go over at 5 or 6 in the evening, which in esport time that's like noon. And they're just kicking off the break between the scrim sets, and I'll probably average about a workshop a week just in general on like kind of like a topics that are increasingly layered on complexity, so we start with just like basic mental resilience, and then we go up from there, and then we implement that in the training environment. So I try to do a little bit of progressive building, scaffolding of mental resilience and just focus and high performance skills as we go along the split, and then combination of firefighting after that. So dealing with whatever issues are hot that week with the players or like coaching staff or whatever. So in TSM, what I did was my main objective was to build a coaching staff that was powerful and consistent and lived beyond me, train myself out of a job, and to create a culture in the team that whenever a new person came in, would take them and operate on them from the culture operating on the individual. So they wouldn't need a person necessarily, they just need somebody to come in every once in a while, but they wouldn't need like a permanent head coach kind of, culture defining person. Because the idea is I'm trying to get Andy Reginald like back into the office, so he can work on his company, but he keeps having to come to the team and like, be a medic in a way. That was my mission. So in G2, it's a little bit different than that because Joey is there, and he's there all the time, and the team has a very strong culture and personality, and the way that they operate is really kind of like congealed. So then I'm just trying to do a lot of firefighting and then operate my program of basically building up elite performance skills in G2, and I do that in the evenings mostly.
Okay, which, as you say, is 9 to 5 esports hours basically.
6 to midnight. Yeah, 6 p.m. to midnight.
Perfect.
Now, speaking of your coaching efforts, you've actually got like a personal training / coaching website for league players called leaguecoaching.gg. And that, if I'm correct, has just sold to a company called Dojo Madness. Is that correct?
That's right. Okay, now I'm going to try to host you. Let's see.
Oh, yeah. Host us on that channel.
Get a host on.
Yep.
All right, I think I'm doing it. Sweet. All right. Now
I think I'm doing it.
Mute this. No, pause it. Okay, there we go. Yeah. Yes. That is correct. What you said.
Okay. Can you tell us a little bit about I think it's a growing part of esports in general. People watch all the streams. They try to get better themselves, and we're definitely seeing more sites kind of jump onto that. So from a casual player, or maybe just like below the pro level, how does your site kind of help? How do you think people have the best chance of improving, or like what should they be doing to improve?
Well, if we're talking about just improvement, I think that there's two reasons that people play League of Legends. I think that you could probably separate yourself in between a gamer and a competitor. So the way that you do this is you look at your playing habits and you ask yourself, like, do I play games like mostly, and I'm not talking like 100%, it might be 51%, 49%, right? Do I play mostly for the enjoyment of the being entertained by the medium or the media? So for example, you could play a PS3 game in the afternoon, you could play a different, a computer game in the evening, you could wake up and play a different game on the Nintendo in the morning, and what drives you to switch and what enjoys you and delights you is the storytelling and the play, maybe the combinations or the play style or optimizing your own personal game or whatever it is. But you enjoy that process of like discovering new things and being entertained by that. Or you're a competitor and literally the only thing that you'd take joy out of is optimizing your game and beating other people. And there are a bunch of gamers out there that are like that. I know because I was one. And if you look at my playing history, I only ever played one video game ever at a time. And when I was and it really kind of tilted me or bored me to even think about playing another video game. Like if that game was offline and there were 4 other games on my computer, I would just be like, ugh. And I would like go watch videos of the first game that I wanted to be playing, instead of actually playing any other video game. Because it was about like being the best at that and trying to optimize that. So I had one thing in my mind, I was pursuing it to mastery. So I think that these sites, like the site that I run, which is a one-on-one training website, they mean different things to different people. So if you're a competitor, the best way to get better is to look in the mirror. And some people, you just aren't raised with the reflective capability of like being brutally harsh to yourself and watching your own replays. So if you struggle to watch your own replays, or if you record a YouTube video and you're too embarrassed to watch it, or if you like give a public speech in class and then you can't listen to the recording, like this isn't a skill that's very easy, like reflective criticism, where you just like tear yourself a new one and then get back on the horse, because you have to sit in 2 seats, right? You got to be like, this is bad, but I'm glad that I'm improving, and I'm criticizing myself, but I'm not the worst person ever. So you have to really have a really strong sense of self-worth, and all of that comes with time and experience. So not everybody's there yet, and certainly even if you are there, it helps to get an outside perspective. And that is what coaching is. That is what one-on-one training is. It's like when you go into a gym and somebody's helping you weightlift and they can see your form, they can see your form better than you can because you're doing it and they're standing here beside you watching it, right? So one-on-one training is exactly that. And it's a little different from AI training, because AI training still relies on you to help yourself, where you're like, okay, I know this habit is bad, but I can't exactly change it. Well, when you have another person there who's entering a dialogue with you and helping you change your habits, they can provide insight, they can provide advice, they can provide accountability, they can do all these things that we do to other humans to like help them kind of take the next step in their habits. And think of everything as a habit, if that helps. Like you either have good habits or bad habits, but they're both habits. So you need to level up your good ones by breaking them into better ones, and you have to get rid of your bad ones, or you have to level them up, by focusing on your weaknesses. And so, yeah, league coaching is a place where you can easily and more safely book a one-on-one training session, because there's hundreds. We have I think now 60,000 registered players and who are reviewing over 20,000 registered coaches, and so there's a large crowdsourcing of quality, right? So the person, this person has 99 plus 4-star reviews, 5-star reviews of, rank improvement. And we rank coaches on the site, right? We take the impact rating before they coach a session, and after they coach a session, we try to see who has the best impact on the players they coach in terms of their ranking increase. What we found when we ran the data last year was after one session, our best coaches, like the average player who takes a ranked kind of like score, I guess, before the lesson and after, from the coaches on our site, gains 2 divisions. So not like gold to diamond, but like gold 4 to gold 2.
So it's kind of like Uber, except your destination is the next division up, right?
Winning.
Yes,
yeah.
It's Uber for getting diamond, guys.
Uber for getting diamond. There you go.
Yep.
All right. So speaking of coaching, you have been around the LCS, both EU and NA, And we just wanted to ask you what the difference is between those two regions that you've seen. Can you give us some insight into how teams from NA sort of function and work as opposed to EU, what the main differences are?
Yeah, this is a tough question. So, because I'm going to throw a lot of people under the bus.
Oh, shit.
Well,
That sounds awful.
I was just about to say all those reasons were why he's amazing and why he's, a storied coach. And here he goes, going to throw someone under the bus. Lovely.
So, I think you can tell from the amount of imports like around the world, how many imports are there in Korea? How many imports are there in EU? How many imports in NA? And where do they come from? That one of NA's biggest problems is lack of homegrown talent, you could say. The skill level is just lower. And part of that comes from just sheer population. I mean, just look at the server populations, When you have a bell curve and you're taking the top 0.002%, if your bell curve is 3 times as big or 2 times as big, you just get better 0.002%ers. So I think that North America is striving to overcome that and did a really good job of overcoming that through professionalization of the sport process. So one of the things that kind of in 2012 made me dive into esport was I saw that the sport was going to professionalize, and I was like, oh, great opportunity here to essentially be a part of that process and help. My real goal, my real like long 10-year, 20-year plan, just so you all know, is I'm good at elite performance, but it has no overarching drive in me in terms of like how it is that I see I would improve the world. I don't think that me helping some person get slightly better at a video game, when they're already kind of got their stuff together, they're already a pro player who's making, who knows, like 5-10K a month, whatever, that like getting them slightly better and slightly less tilted like brings any grand value to the universe in a way, right? So I'm really aiming at amateur esport and how it is that the hundreds and thousands and maybe tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of kids who are trying to go pro and never make it, what they're going to get out of that experience in 10 years when esport is like the de facto hegemonic sport that like all youth do, right? But if we dial it back to just North America and EU and the differences between the two regions, North America professionalized faster, and it is the case in North America that the coaches and the kind of like the team administration in the top teams can impact the training environment, I would say, in a stronger way than in EU. So I think that like esports is beautiful because it started from player-centered sport, right? If you look at some of the biggest problems in sport, especially professional sport today, it's all of these scandals, right? Where people are being abused, and that power transfers downward. So when in pro sport, when you have really powerful infrastructure and coaches, that goes down to the youth level, and the coaches are gods, right? And they abuse kids. And sometimes it's, the case that happened in the Midwest where it's like ends up with sexual abuse and cover up. And other times it's just like they just beat them up. They're just bad coaches and they beat them up mentally, physically, whatever. They hurt their bodies. And esport is really amazing because it started fresh and started new. And so it started with power centered in the player. And that's really great for like a nexus of starting, right? But the players have to hand off power to get more efficient at playing and to get better. Kind of like how it happens in Formula One, where not everybody can tune the engine. Like the driver needs to focus on driving. They got to hire somebody to tune their engine and fill the gas and change the tires and all that stuff. So they had to hand away power. And in NA, they're more willing to hand away power to get better faster because they realize that they have a challenge. And so it's more the top teams are driven by the administration and the infrastructure and the environment, and less dictated by the players and how they feel on a given day and how they feel about a particular person. And so that is a bonus, and then EU, it's much more player driven. And so that's really good on the top end when you have incredible players like in G2 where the players are just phenomenal, right? And they're literally all like type A, I want to be the best and I will do whatever it takes to work with you to become the best personalities, right? So that's why they've been undefeated in EU for so long. But the competition in EU is so bad that like you can't get any training for the international stage here because you just keep rolling over the standard competition because the players aren't pushed just a little bit more by the environment to train harder, and if they are pushed by that, they push back against the coaches, of course. That's who wouldn't. When you're doing fine, you're winning and you're happy, but you just like don't want to train a little bit harder, and so we're left with a little bit less in terms of like the region's strength. And then you have disasters like Origen, where, the players kind of drive. It's like player driven to the extreme, even to the point that the owner's a player, but not the owner's the player in the way Carlos was an owner, where he like stepped up and was like, I'm the owner, not a player. But in the way, unfortunately, where Xpeke did, where he was like, I'm a player again. And then like, what can a coach ever say to the owner of a team, when they're on the roster about, correcting another player?
That's what you call a conflict of interest.
Yeah.
So I think the difference in EU is in infrastructure for good or for nil, right? So for the good of the fact that NA can push ahead, but for the nil that like they're giving away power, so they're going to be more and more abused, and are going to need to more swiftly get to the point where they have a player union, because if they give away all of their power, they're going to be at the behest of organizations in in the next 5 years, and of course that needs to happen in the sake of like higher performance, but I hope that it's delayed as long as possible, and that works in EU because the skill level of the individual players is so high that they can like. Here's a little insight. When we scrimmed H2K at Worlds, when they got there, they were bad, and when they left, they were really good. I mean, we scrimmed them right when they arrived and right when they left, right? Or right when we left. TSM, we left before they did. And they were much, much better. And the reason they got so much better over those 2 weeks, because they have all the raw skill, and they just didn't have anybody to test it on in Europe. They didn't have anybody who was resoundingly crushing them, and they didn't understand why. And so they had to level up, right? But you could see that the skill level they had for leveling up was really fast. So I think that that's what EU has, that kind of like they get unlocked by having stronger competition. So the more like, chances that we have to go abroad and kind of get beaten up, I think the stronger we'll get.
How do you think this kind of plays out in the long run for between North America and Europe kind of catching up to Korea? I mean, I think we can kind of say that's the goal for Western organizations at this point, right? Is to be kind of on the same level as them. With North America, it looks like you're getting much bigger influxes of investor money. And then in Europe, you have to import fewer players to Europe. I mean, it's going to ruffle feathers, but like, yeah, you're right. I think the skill level in Europe does trend to the higher side. Which approach is the best in the long run?
Well, I mean, it's not like there's an approach, right? It's just the population of EU is much bigger. The social services here are amazing, so kids can play video games up to they're 21 and not care about it, and they can all in on that lifestyle, much easier. I mean, look at the Danes, right? Like,
yeah, that's true.
Their state is smaller and more well structured and efficient, and so they can kind of support more and more of those people who are all in on esport as a professional, but don't quite make it, so they got to try harder, and so they need to, people in America, like kids in America, are getting kicked out of their house, at age 17, 16, and 18, playing video games and told to go get jobs, and sure, there's the extreme case like Doublelift where he's like, all right, and he takes the computer and like goes and becomes a pro, but most people just go get a job, then they'll never go pro. So, which approach is better? What I think is going to happen in the future is that, more revenue, I think that the real answer is Riot's competition. So I think that these things are just going to kind of keep going along, growing exponentially as they have been in Riot's esport world. But I think if Riot gets threatened from another game or another esport that is like actually challenging them in terms of monthly active users and marketing potential, then what they'll do is they will have to, by sheer force of competition, unlock more revenue for the streams that they are, for the teams that are participating in the ecosystem. And when that happens, then the investors will start getting their payout, and that'll be the real answer to the question of which region has a sustainable business model. Because we know that China already kind of does, right? So they're able to monetize their broadcast in an extreme amount. They have insane viewership, and they have unbridled amounts of money that is actual real money. A lot of it is real money. I mean, okay, most of the investment money, they're just overpaying like crazy, It's really insane. They're just taking money and throwing it in there. But they do have a lot of real money that's like being accessed by that. And I think that, they might end up being a really strong region because they have a sustainable kind of like setup there. But Riot's doing really amazing things to unlock that, in North America with this MLB deal. So I think that like the infrastructure buildup will be supported as long as there's business models that can actually siphon value from the industry that exist. And then it's just going to be about player skill, right? And EU has a bigger mountain of players, so they're going to be better.
All right, so Welden, let me take you back to NA for a second. I want to ask you about the Team Liquid situation. So, like, after quite a few dismal performances, they're now fighting against the possibility of being relegated. They made a ton of roster swaps lately, including bringing in Doublelift as sort of a hired gun. What must it be like, as someone who's been in these camps before and who's been with the team in tough situations, what must it be like in Team Liquid right now?
Well, I think like going into the Echo Fox match, it was probably pretty uplifting. You know, they were like, "Yeah, we're so gonna win," and then probably now they're pretty depressed but focused. I'd say
depressed but focused. Yeah. So
I think it's just the only way to answer that is just stay incredibly stressed, right? Everybody's doing their best, and everybody probably on the surface is like pushing really hard, and they're striving to do every single thing they can. And I think there's a mountain of stress and fear underneath, and that is exactly what elite performance is. You know, when you're in a single elimination tournament where everything is on the line. And I don't mean single elimination like they're gonna lose one and get out, right? Because like relegations is double elimination, but I mean like this is it, right? This is the end of the season. It's not like it's a third week match. Right, and then there's the fourth week and the fifth week. It's like the end. You get eliminated, and then you're done for the season. Whether that's relief, like, oh, thank gosh, we made it back in, or intense depression. So, I don't know. I think everybody handles that in their own way. Obviously, I think Steve is probably just making plans, backup plans, for every possible capability, because that's what a good leader does. And I think the players are probably studying their opponents really hard.
Just on the player front, you've obviously worked with Doublelift a fair amount. What do you think, like him going into that situation, what is his mindset at? I mean, you hear talk about, well, he's got a spot on TSM's roster if he wants to go back. But really, they're bringing him in, as Colin said, as a hired gun. He is a great player, performed incredibly well last split. What's kind of going through his mind, or like, do you think he's got what it takes to turn them around or carry them through the relegations?
So what's going through Peter's mind and what goes through like Soren's mind and Dennis's mind and even Kevin, I'm going to rag on Kevin a little bit, but is essentially like after a match, they're always thinking about the things that they failed to do and that they screwed up that led to the failure of the match. Like Peter's probably just thinking of every single call that he didn't make, or call that he like half-assed, or like moment of weakness where he didn't flash, that he's blaming himself for the loss. That's like when I go into a team, it's really easy to determine who the top players are or who the top players are going to be, and who is just going to be like a B player kind of all the time. And it's essentially the people who take full responsibility not only for their own mistakes but also their teammates' mistakes, thinking, man, I should have confronted him about this like 3 weeks ago when I saw him making this mistake in scrims, or man, I should have taken the responsibility away from him and just like made it myself because he obviously didn't figure it out, or man, I should have spent an extra time to talk with him or duo queue with him, when it's somebody else's mistake. So I imagine that's exactly what's going through his mind, is he's just replaying the biggest mistakes that he made in those matches, like in his head over and over and over again, and he's tunneling on them in training in order to try to turn his weaknesses into his strengths, which is what champions do, more or less.
So Weldon, on that note, I mean, you coach players to really reach the next level of skill. When they do face a big loss like that, is there any sort of coaching in how to deal with, post-game stress and stuff like that?
Most of that is done before. So the best thing that you can do to help players go into these high-stakes matches is to try to minimize regret. Like the last thing that you ever want to do after a match is regret that you didn't take the risk, or you didn't take the engage, or that you didn't train hard enough, or that you spent 2 nights last week watching anime instead of, scrimming, solo queuing extra games, right? So my job is to be their like future conscience and say like, here you are 3 weeks before, the biggest match of your life, and like I'm helping them, I'm reminding them what it's going to feel like the morning after if they lose. Like it's really like depressing. It's like being a death angel, right? Like, what are you doing right now? What could you be doing? And how is it tied to you in 4 weeks? And like living the rest of your life in regret, because we're humans, right? We're really, really, really bad at long-term thinking, long-term planning. Like, we're animals. We just see sugar and we're like, you know, no, we're so bad at that. And that's the same for people who love video games and perform at the highest levels, right? We're like, yeah, I mean, it's 3 weeks away till the end of the season. I could watch one episode and then solo queue, you know? So I have to be the bearer of bad news and like the realist and help people connect to their values about what it is they want. So I would say like 99.9% of the work comes after that or before that event, right? But then after the game, what I do is I lay groundwork for the future, right? I try to help people crystallize their feelings. I try to help people be like, okay, you feel that pain? Okay, like describe it. Let's draw circles around it. Let's color it in. Let's understand all the different tones of it. Like, how deep does it run? Where is its source? Are you in pain because of the people you let down? Are you in pain because you had something you wanted to accomplish? Are you in pain because you like to win? Are you in pain because your family saw you lose? Like, everybody has different drivers, right? So we try to like turn that into a big, beautiful piece of art and then just like crystallize it and sit it there so that they can use it as fuel the next time around. So that's what your job is as a coach and as a mentor after a big loss like this, is to help people understand why they are suffering and why they feel the way they feel, and like use it to make the next go around like even better.
And Weldon, I got to commend you for, I mean, first of all, to coach people on how to deal with, you know, a loss is amazing in its own right, because, I mean, we've talked about it before. Like, I don't know if a lot of these kids are getting a disservice in not knowing, you know, a lot of life skills, you know, how to play a game, but maybe not how to lose greatly. And I just want to, on that note of, you know, how they take their feelings, is this any different from, you know, other young professionals in, you know, in traditional sports who, after they face a loss, have to deal with media and Twitter and interviews and stuff like that? Is there something fundamentally different about, say, the way Riot doesn't allow like post-game interviews for people who have lost? Is there something around that?
There's a couple fundamental differences. There's two, I'd say. The first one is that it's much more delayed. So you get to graduate up from like minor losses when you play in traditional sport, right? Because we have youth esports that's live, right? So live competition is the crucial element here that's missing from esports. So you get to compete in all this live competition for a decade and a half, like 15 years maybe, before you ever have a Twitter follower that's related to your skill, to be honest, right? And even then, you got to compete at the NCAA, where you have like actual fangirls on campus, you know, and fans on campus, where they're real actual people, you know, coming to your games, and you get a little fan club started, but nobody off campus has ever heard of you because you're not like a superstar, you know, off the campus. And then you graduate from that world into, you know, Twitter, Facebook, whatever. So there's this like gradual coping, you know, that you learn along the way. So it's way easier than being dumped in the deep end of pro esport. Like, it's insane how big that cliff is. So there's literally no expectation that you should ever have for a pro esport athlete. They should have any capability to like perform well post game, post loss, until like 5 years in, I would say.
Wow, like that's it's a good point that you hit on there, Ryan. It's an interesting thing, and we were talking about it before, but it's not until Welden actually gave us his thoughts on it that the wheels started turning.
And you can hear me rant about post-game interviews, man.
Yeah, well, now
how can I argue with that?
I mean, like, he makes a great point. Welden does that. In traditional sports, we have the infrastructure where you do play live for like 10 years or what have you. But I mean, like, take Austin Matthews, young man on the Toronto Maple Leafs NHL. He number one draft in the NHL. Okay, so people are gonna know him outside of Canada. Okay, like sports fans are gonna know him outside of Canada. Young guy, he's 18, 19, something like that. And this guy has like the pressure of the world on him, like incredible amounts of pressure. He's on national TV, international TV, like on Saturday nights, and he can come out and he can do a post-game interview.
Yes. I guess he's much more grounded, and, you know, he's dealing with, I guess, like Weldon just said, about all these losses growing up. And I guess another thing I never thought about, because, again, I rant about these post-game interviews and how we don't get them and how it can be a win-win. I do. But another point that Weldon mentioned was, you know, I guess, like, the internet and that's where you get like a lot of criticisms. It's not the stadium of people who want to say great game. It's someone who sat down on their computer on YouTube just throwing out fucking hate, man. So many people hate on the internet, and that's got to be much more difficult to take because people talk shit.
It's the armchair quarterbacks, right? Like it's all the guys saying, "Oh, I could do this better." And
That's true.
With esports, that's all it is. You're right, because there is very few people in the live stadium. You get all of Reddit on your ass. Yeah, go ahead, Weldon.
I want you to think about the psychology of criticism, right? So, like, let's pretend for a moment that you're face to face with this quarterback, and you deliver to them your thoughts about the game, and they see you and they know who you are, and you see them and you know who they are, right? The way that you're going to say and couch your terms is very different from anonymous feedback that you deliver, right? And that's all that we really get in the in the esport world is anonymous feedback. And so that kind of unlocks your worst kind of your worst potential. And to go along with that, I think that there's a lot of coaching that goes hand in hand. So you lose, and then your coach says this thing that helps you, and then you lose again, and you get this mantra driven in you. One thing I noticed about Peter in his post-game interviews, first of all, he's really good at doing them. Part of the reason he's good at doing them is experience. The other part is because he had a series of strong coaches that narrated for him what it is to lose and why it is you strive and what losses mean. And then as you cope with loss after loss, you build that narrative in yourself, and then you can easily tell the story. But a lot of people who are losing have never had a mentor tell them what it means to them over and over again and formed a story for their losses. They just see pain and they're frustrated and they don't know why they lose. They just want to win. So they just talk about how they want to get to the next game and win.
Yeah.
So they don't have a narrative for how they don't have a storyline for how that loss kind of plays into their ultimate career, right? But I think the second really important thing is that, and this is more to do with how traditional sports are different from esports, is that in traditional sports, you have to suffer pain, like physical pain, in order to become an elite athlete. So you have to suffer through 10, 20, 30 years of like actual physical torture where you push yourself to the point of pain, or like in my case, as an elite swimmer, like pushing myself to the point of nausea and vomiting on purpose in order to like overtrain and then super compensate, in the overtraining cycle. So you're really used to tolerating discomfort, just like as a byproduct of sport. And that doesn't exist in esport because you're not training your muscles, right? You're not training physically. So now keep in mind that I'm not saying that esports isn't a sport, because I think there's a fundamental difference between esports like League of Legends and CSGO and mental competitions like Hearthstone. Like in esport, we know that the motor center, in League of Legends, we know the motor center is part of the like seeing a visual thing on the screen, processing it, having an instant automatic reaction, and moving your arm. You're using gross motors, like you're using the same things you do if you were doing Olympic shooting in terms of like your neuromuscular nerves. So we know that it's a sport like akin to that, and it's really different from Hearthstone, where it's mostly logic and decision making, right? So I'm not talking about like the fact that like it's a mental sport versus a physical sport. I'm saying that you don't do the kind of like long intense training where you can injure and hurt your huge the huge muscles in your body that just cause you pain every day, and possibly injure them and overuse them in a way that causes daily constant waking up with pain and pushing yourself to the point of exhaustion. So I think that there's a later growth in mental resilience and mental toughness in esport, because you don't get it till you start live competition. I think that'll change in the future, because I think live competition is going to come sooner and sooner and sooner in esport life. And you can already see that in all the major cities where they're building arenas and people are jumping out of the global ladder and into the local leagues, because fundamentally we humans hate being the little fish in the big pond. We want to be the big fish in the little pond. And that's how we structure our sport experiences. You join a little league team, then you join a club team, then you join the state level, and then you join the national level, right? You're always like going up from a smaller pond to a bigger pond. You don't just go compete against national ranked ladders like in your first year of playing football, like you do in esport, where you just get thrown into a pot with every single person in the world. So once we can afford to create local leagues, we will, and people will love to play them, because you want to go 1 week, see the person and lose to them, and then train hard and go the next week and see the person and beat them. That feels great. And we get that when we get live training. So then we'll have the constant pain, where you go in a week and then you lose and it's painful, and you start to cope and you train for the success of victory in the next week. But right now we don't have that source of discomfort, and that discomfort is how you level up your game. So then people are getting pro right now with not the greatest faculties in terms of mental resilience prepared.
And I just want to elaborate on another point that you mentioned, and that being, I guess it comes up when I talk about FGC guys and how much, like their ego is I guess not deflated, but they're more humble when they lose or when they win because they're there right in front of people. How many times do I watch Twitch fails that are rage quits, that are people smashing stuff? You've got some people, and I know this from Beyond the Summit and being at the place, when you get some of these, and not to say like, less social esports players, people who have always been playing at home by themselves, they make it to challenger level, and just like we've got a guest coming on next, Cake, who then gets signed professionally, that's the first time that they've dealt with people in real life that they lose in front of and deal with that pain. So they go from somebody who are at home, never see anybody, to the grand stage. So I guess my takeaway from this, I think my mind's changed, is that yes, definitely post-game interviews, but maybe it needs to take some time for the esport to mature and to be able, people to be able to handle losses and the pro scene to really develop.
Okay, Welden, I don't know if you realize the gravity of what just happened, but Ryan changed his mind.
That's great, man.
So that's pretty good.
I like this podcast. He's awesome.
Wow, you're so
Welden
happy.
can be my life coach.
I actually want to jump. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, do not use the word life coach. Oh my god. Woo! So triggered.
So triggered.
Why is that a trigger, Welden?
Why?
Why?
The monitor now.
Why is that a trigger?
This is Weldon going off right now. All the stuff he preached, he's going to start smashing monitors.
Why is life coach a trigger? Why?
Life coach? Oh, I just hate the term life coach.
Oh, that's just a pet peeve.
Yeah, you've got no other
Yeah.
skills. You're
Okay.
just going to life coach. Yeah.
Okay, I want to actually go off of this because I think it's really interesting what you and Ryan were talking about, how these guys aren't really like...
It peeves me because anybody can call themselves a life coach, and I didn't sacrifice 2 years of my life and like 2 years of my wife's career and thousands and tens of thousands of euros to move to a different country and get a master's degree in sports psychology and slave away 2 years in my internship and like all so that I could, become a sports psychology trainer and then like compete with people who are calling themselves life coaches.
I'd like to take this opportunity.
They read some book and they're like, yes, exactly. And they're like an export coach and they're like, I'm a life coach in esport. And I'm like, okay.
Well, I would like to take this opportunity on live on Twitch to announce that I am now a life coach.
Oh,
and you can get at me at McNeil Collin on Twitter. I'll sort you out.
Gambling pennies. We got
yeah, right. He'll get you up there. All right. I'm the
first person to believe in meritocracy and meritocracy over any sort of paper, right? So
Yeah.
I don't give a crap about like all of the stuff that I sacrificed to get good. If you're better than me, like if you call yourself a life coach, you're better than me. Awesome. But I haven't met very many life coaches who are like life coach is like the starter term. Maybe eventually you become a performance coach. I don't know, or you go and
No, I think you can draw a parallel to what you were saying about the pro players and having to sit back and really look at how much work is going to go into it, how much they need to put into it to actually be a pro versus being a life coach, right? Like I could be a ladder player and be like, I could be a pro, but I'm not willing to put the time into it. I mean that's kind of the same thing, right? But
so if you're out there and you really want to be a life coach and you want to call yourself a life coach and go crazy, but just like understand that you will have to earn my respect with results because you won't get it due to your Twitter handle. Okay?
shit.
But I'm verified.
All right. So just to go back to what we were talking about with the players, we talk about losing, and I think one of the really interesting things to me in esports is that we're still very much around a lot of team houses. And I think that going back and having to, already I think it's a tough situation to have to live with your coworkers all the time. Yeah. To go back after a loss and have to deal with that, either blaming somebody else or blaming yourself, feeling like the entire team is blaming you. Do you think that's healthy? Do you think that's the way that it needs to be? Or do you think there's a better way?
It's a coaching flaw if you screw that up. That's a huge advantage. It's a huge advantage. If you can get the team to lose together instead of losing apart. Okay? That is crucial to get the team to lose together instead of losing apart. So I'll give you an example. Rocket. You guys know Team Rocket from EU, LCS?
Yeah,
yes, sir.
Yeah, of course.
Like X game losing streak or whatever. Now they're on a 5-game winning streak. Okay, they brought in my friend Ula, who happens to be an organizational psychologist and sports psychology trainer who I've been working with for 2 years. And they brought her in. They were like, help! Right? So the first thing she did was she put them together as a team and she had them start. She had all of their losses. Like, it's when you lose a game in your domino pieces and you all fall out in different directions, it's lost opportunity to define culture, to define training, to commit to a value that is singular and that drives the team forward, right? you have to take learning from losses. And for that, you need to, first of all, lose into each other. You need to fall into each other and support each other. And that takes a special kind of, I mean, it's not hard to do. It's just, it takes experience and skill to like create that environment and to make sure it happens right and to force people to do it when they want to turn away from each other in their pain and like hide it. So, yeah, so that's separate from gaming houses, right? Because like this is just about coaching quality and the ability to have a bunch of young people who are embarrassed about a loss in their performance, like, or frustrated with their teammates, understand how to cope with their teammates who let them down. And by the way, in case you want a practical tool for that, you deal with the elephant in the room. So like every single game has a reason that you lost, and everybody like, I'm trying not to swear here. Everybody,
that's okay, man.
Every game has a single person who maybe shit the bed a little bit worse than somebody else, right? And everybody knows it, right? Including that person. So you just get everybody in a circle and you have a confession, right? And you have everybody share what they did bad in the game they could have done better, and the person who, you know, had that one moment that really like blew everything, you know, they confess to it, and everybody knows that they know it, and they know it, and it's out there in the open, and the elephant is out of the room, and you can start working on building. So that's how you deal with that, just at a basic level. Okay, so gaming houses. I think it's fine. I think it's more like NCAA, right? You level up from high school. Most of these guys are straight out of high school. From high school, you go to college. You don't get thrown on a pro team with your own apartment to have to do your laundry and your taxes and your banking. Like you get thrown into college where your parents are sent. You know, you're on your parents' insurance, and like you have joint laundry machines, and like, you know, you go to the CAF with other people and stuff like that. So I think gaming houses, once there's money, will level up into gaming campuses where there's multiple teams, the CSGO team and the Hearthstone team and the League team and the Rocket League team, and there will be an organizational-wide culture, and they'll take a performance coach and they'll share them among all the teams, you know, these kind of things. But I think that the idea of having the guys live together in the same place and taking care of as much off their plate as you possibly can as an org to allow them to focus on performance is a good idea. I think you do want to give them something to level up their maturity, right? But it's individual, and you give them one at a time. So in every team I work in, I identify everybody's like plate, what they feel like is full, and I take everything off that's like bothering them, and I add one thing at a time that they have to focus on above and beyond what they're doing, and they stretch themselves for that. And if I see they're really resilient, I might add 2 or 3 or 4. And you know, you have really experienced advanced players who are like 23 years old, like Peter, who've been around the scene, and they can handle their own gym membership and their banking and their company and their girlfriend and whatever, no problem. And then you have brand new players who like couldn't also do their laundry and live in a team house and train. So
yeah, shout outs to all the young gamers who can actually do their own laundry. I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you.
Just Google how to cook as well.
All separate.
Welden, unfortunately, I think we've burned all the time we have today. That went really fast. That was a fascinating talk. Thank you so much for stopping by the Score Esports podcast.
And congratulations on changing Ryan's mind. That cannot be
Yeah,
undersold.
we have to say that again.
Yeah.
I have one last question, Welden. It's Monday. I need some motivation for the rest of the week. Are you a quotes guy? Do you have quotes?
Motivational quote.
Gosh, I was just working on some slides today. I did a workshop for G2 this afternoon, and I put some quotes in there. I was like, where's this quote from? And I was like, I think I made it. I'm a quotes guy. Yes. I'm like, I finally have quotes I can say for myself. Because I always
Retweet
make
yourself.
a Twitter picture, and
Yeah.
I put some cheesy quote on there, and I have to say that it belongs to somebody else. I'm like, when am I going to have my own quotes for my own pictures? And now I'm dropping ball because I can't actually remember it.
Well, just
Still a
send
good
it to
story.
us, and we'll tweet it out
All
ourselves.
right,
Exactly.
Here's people ask me how to get pro in esport, and they complain about a lot of things, and they say like, oh, I can't do this, I can't do that, and no, people don't notice me, people won't give me a chance, people won't look at my resume, blah 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 blah. Right now, esport is growing really fast, and it's the Wild West, and you can build your brand and get connected with anybody that you want if you just DM them on Twitter over and over again, or Instagram or whatever. So the easiest way to get involved in esport at the pro level, if you want to, is to be so good that they can't ignore you. And that is something
fair.
that I think
easy.
Yep.
Steve Martin said, right?
Oh, I love
So
Steve
people
Martin.
ask me like, how do I go pro as a player? And the answer is easy. You get top ranked on Challenger, and then you start messaging people being like, look at me. I'm so good that you literally can't ignore me. I'm in your lane killing you in solo queue. And then people will recruit you for a team, and you're in.
Well, there it is,
That is
folks.
good.
Be
That's good.
so good they can't ignore you. Weldon, once again, thank you so much, man.
Yeah,
Thanks for taking the time, Welden.
appreciate it.
Take care.
Ciao.
All right, guys. Good conversation.
Wait, do I hang up now, or are we offline?
Oh, you can hang up. Yeah. We're just riffing right
we're on
now.
the scale out, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, I'm shutting